Hello, this is Guy Unger. I'm here today to talk to you about modes and chords and the relationships between the two. So without further ado, let's get to it. I'm playing a guitar, however, these concepts with modes and chords and the relationships between the two are relevant to any instrument. So you can use this whether you're playing saxophone, piano, flute, you're doing a bass solo, any of the above. Understanding these concepts will help you improvise, of course, but also they're great for composition. But we'll get into the compositional aspect of that in a later video. What are modes? The easiest way to get started understanding modes is basically thinking of the major scale. If you play a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, that is a major scale, but it's also a mode called the Ionian mode. And if I start on the second note of the C major scale, D, and continue to play just the notes of C major, starting on D and ending on D, then that would give me the D Dorian mode. So that would be D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And you'll notice the sound of that sounds very different, even though I'm only playing the notes of the C major scale. All right. So if I go back to the C major, see, that's just a happy sound, and Dorian has a minor sound. All right, same notes, but it gives you a different feel. Let's start with the mode names in order. That's how we're going to learn how to play each individual mode in relationship to a major scale. So the first one is Ionian, second one is Dorian, the third one is Phrygian, the fourth one is Lydian, the fifth is Mixolydian, the sixth is Aeolian, and the seventh is Locrian. And I have a little saying that helps me memorize these. I don't punch like Muhammad Ali. So if we do this and we play it in the key of C major, as you see on the screen, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. And that gives me this sound again, the Ionian mode. All right. So if I start on D, that gives me the D Dorian mode, just playing the notes of C major, starting on D and ending on D. Now that has a different feel and a different sound, even though it's the same notes. Now the third mode is E Phrygian. So we're going to start on the third note of the scale, which is E, C, D, E, and we're going to play just C major, starting on E and ending on E. All right, has a very unique sound. We're going to start on the fourth note, which is F, in the key of C major, and that's going to be F Lydian. Just playing the notes of C major again, starting on F and ending on F. And then the fifth mode, or the fifth note of C major, is G, C, D, E, F, G. And we're going to start on G and end on G, only playing the notes of C major again. So. All right, so that's G Mixolydian. Now we're going to start on the sixth note, which is A in the key of C major, C, D, E, F, G, A. And then we're just playing the notes of C major, starting on A and ending on A. This is A Aeolian, or also known as the natural minor scale, or just the minor scale. All right, so that gives me the Aeolian mode, A Aeolian in this case. We're going to start on the seventh note now, which is B in the key of C major. And this is going to give us the B Locrian mode. This is diminished. Okay, so that's the notes and and basically how they relate to one parent scale. This is going to apply to any other key that you do it in. It's always going to stay the same. It's going to stay in the same order. So if we move to a different key, if we just move everything up to D major, we're going to start on D, and that would give us the D Ionian mode in the key of D major. And the second note, which would be E, would become E Dorian. And then the third note of D major, which would be F sharp, would give me the F sharp Phrygian scale, and so on. So the modes stay in the same order, the concepts stay the same, the notes within them just change depending on the key that they're related to. So this is a relative concept, how they're related. They're sharing the same notes, the same concept as relative major and relative minor. So what makes these scales or keys or modes sound unique is where the half steps fall. So in the C major scale, you'll notice the half steps fall between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, or 7 back to 1. So if we look, C, D, E, F. So between E and F, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So between B and C gives us our other set of half steps. So those half steps are going to change. They're going to shift as we move up. So when we go to the second note or the second mode, Dorian, that means our half steps are going to fall instead between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. They're going to fall between 2 and 3 and 6 and 7 now. So 1, 2, 3. All right. 4, 5, 6, 7. And then now we're back to our D. So that shifting of those half steps is what creates the unique sounds for each independent mode. As we get into the chords and their relationship to these modes a little bit later, we're going to group these into 3 different categories of modes: major, minor, and diminished. So let's continue with talking about where these half steps fall. If we stay in key, we'll notice that as we go to D Dorian, the half steps fall between 2 and 3 and 6 and 7. When we move on to Phrygian, in this case E Phrygian in this key, the half steps fall between 1 and 2 and 5 and 6. And we move to Lydian, our half steps are going to fall between 4 and 5 and 7 and 8. When we get to Mixolydian, our half steps are going to fall between 3 and 4 and 6 and 7. When we get to Aeolian, our half steps fall between 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. And then when we get to Locrian, our half steps fall between 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. So now let's get into understanding how the chords have a relationship to these modes. So if we spell this out, we have our C major scale: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. All right? And we spell that out, and we take the first, the third, and the fifth. That gives us our C, E, and G notes of the C major scale, or the C Ionian mode. And that gives us a C major triad, or a C major chord. So I can play a C major chord, and I can play the C Ionian mode. So if I extend this out into seventh chords, that gives me 1, 3, 5, and 7 of the C major or the C Ionian mode. In this case, it gives me C, E, G, and B. And that gives me a C major 7 sound. All right, so if I have a C major 7 chord, I can play the C Ionian mode. So in D Dorian, if I take the first, the third, and the fifth notes, that gives me D, F, and A, which spells out a D minor chord or a D minor triad. If I take this mode and find the seventh chord version of it, it's going to give me the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7, which is D, F, A, and C, which gives me a D minor 7 chord. If I continue on, I go to E Phrygian. I take the first, the third, the fifth. That gives me E, G, and B, which is an E minor chord. Extend it out to E minor 7. It gives me E, G, B, and D, which is an E minor 7 chord. All right, moving to the 4. That gives me F, which is the F Lydian mode. If I spell out these notes, I take the first, third, and fifth. That's F, A, and C. That gives me an F major chord. If I extend it out to sevenths, it's going to give me F, A, C, and E, which gives me an F major 7. All right, so for G, we have G Mixolydian. Take the 1, 3, and 5. That gives me G, B, and D, which gives me a G major chord. Extend it out to a 7, we get G, B, D, and F, and that gives me a G dominant 7 chord. All right, and then we go to A, which is the 6th note, and the 6th mode, which is A Aeolian in this case. We take the 1, 3, and 5, it gives me A, C, and E, which gives me an A minor chord. All right, we extend that out to a 7th, we get A, C, E, and then G, which gives me an A minor 7 chord. Now finally we have B Locrian, which if I take the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th, that gives me B, D, and F, which is a diminished triad, which would sound like this. And if I extend that out to the 7th chord, that gives me B, D, F, and A, which gives me a B half diminished chord, which is a B minor 7 flat 5. So knowing how these chords relate to the modes now helps us classify the modes into groupings of major, minor, and diminished. So our 3 modes that are major are Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. And then our minor modes are going to be Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. And then we have one extra mode, which is a diminished mode, and that's Locrian. So you can think of these categories that groups them into ways to use them. So when you see a C major chord, I know that I can use a C Ionian mode, I can use C Lydian, and I can use C Mixolydian. However, if we get into 7th chords, C major 7 means that I can use the C Ionian mode. C major 7 also works with C Lydian, but if I go to C Mixolydian, I can't use that against the C major 7 chord because our chord has a flat 7 in it, which means we have a B flat for that chord. So therefore, it goes with the dominant 7 chord, so I have to use Mixolydian over a dominant 7 chord. We get to the minor modes, and we realize that all of them work with the minor triad and minor 7 chords. So if I have an A minor 7 chord, I can use A Aeolian, I can use A Phrygian, and I can use A Dorian. So all of those work great with just a minor 7 chord or just a minor triad. The difference comes in when you have chord extensions and we go past that. So if you look at your 7th chords, it's kind of like a skeleton of your whole mode or your whole scale. So you have a note, you're skipping a note, you have a note, you skip a note, so on and so forth all the way through the scale. When we have chord extensions though, we get into, for instance, if I have a minor 7 chord, A minor 7, that works for all of the minor modes. But if I have an A minor 13 chord, I can't use that with Phrygian and I can't use it with Aeolian because those have a minor 6 or a flat 6 interval in them. The only mode that has a regular major 6 is the Dorian mode. So I can only use A Dorian over A minor 7 with the 6 in there, which would be A minor 13 is what that's called. All right. So now that we're talking about the major modes, the minor modes, we're going to compare those to, like the major modes we're going to compare to the major scale or the Ionian mode. And the minor modes we're going to compare to the minor scale or the Aeolian mode. All right. So when we see the differences there, that's what's going to give each mode its characteristic sound. For instance, all the major modes, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian, all have a major triad in them, which classifies them as major. But what makes these modes sound different from one another? They have shades of major, is the way I like to look at it. So your major mode, the Ionian scale, has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nothing's different. It's just the major scale. But when we compare Lydian to that major scale, for instance, if we have C Ionian, it's just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. But when we have C Lydian, we have C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and back to C. So that gives me that sharp 4 scale degree in the Lydian mode. So the Lydian mode's characteristic note is basically F sharp or the sharp 4. So when I think Lydian, I can think sharp 4. So if I have a major 7 or a major sharp 11 chord, then that's going to tell me that I can use, or I should use, the Lydian mode over that. So if I play C major sharp 11, that's going to go great with the C Lydian scale. It's going to really spell that sound out. Let's talk about the characteristic modes for all the other modes. So when we get to Mixolydian, we have, it's the exact same thing as the Ionian mode or the major scale, except it has a flat 7. So if I have C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, C Mixolydian has C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, and C. So then that gives me this sound. All right, that goes great with our dominant 7 chord. Now let's get to the minor modes. All right, so we're going to compare all the minor modes to the natural minor scale, in this case, which is the Aeolian mode. So the Aeolian mode has a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7 in it. So that's how it differs from the major scale. So if I do C Aeolian or C natural minor, that gives me C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and then we're back to C again. So how does that differ from the Dorian mode? We've discussed this a little bit earlier. That the difference between that is it gives me, I have a flat 6 in the natural minor scale, but I have a major 6 in the Dorian mode. And that's the characteristic note for that. You can think of the 2 or the 9, and the 6 or the 13 is the characteristic notes of the Dorian mode. So we have a regular 2 and we have a regular 6 or major 2nd and a major 6 or major 13, however you want to look at it. All right. So Dorian, so natural minor to start with. And the characteristic note for Dorian is the major 6. So let's hear that sound. All right, so that gives us a really unique sound. Okay, moving on. We're going to go to the difference between Phrygian and Aeolian, or natural minor. So, again, natural minor, or the Aeolian mode, has a flat 3, flat 6, and a flat 7. So what's the differences between Phrygian and Aeolian? Well, we have a flat 2. So if I have C Aeolian, and then I have C Phrygian, I have a flat 2. So that's that characteristic note. All right, so it has a really darker, a much darker sound, and it's really exotic sound, really cool. Locrian is kind of its own thing. It has its diminished sound. You don't tend to use this one a whole lot in regular pop, rock, or blues. You will use it quite a bit in jazz and whatnot, but there is no definitive all the time. You know, great players get creative and really learn how to apply unique sounds to what they're doing. So I encourage you to practice these. And so there's a lot of great practice backing tracks. I have a few. I've also done a video on triads that would help you understand this as well. I just recently did a video on 7th chords, and I also did a video on minor modes in the pentatonic scale. So those are great things to check out. I've done a couple of backing tracks that you can practice over. Also, I have a good friend, Sunil Munger 2. If you go to his channel, he's got quite a few backing tracks he's putting out now, a good friend of mine. So bringing that up brings up a term, modal interchange. Modal interchange, you can basically just think if I have a minor 7 chord, my possibilities are the 3 different minor modes. So if I have a minor 7, I can use a lot of these different things. Until you get to the chord extensions, where the chord extensions tend to narrow down your possibilities, which can be really cool because you want to target chord tones as you're improvising. So if I'm soloing, and I have a minor 7 chord, let's say I'm in A, I have A minor 7. I'm trying to target chord tones when I finish. So here I'm kind of aiming at that minor 3rd. So right there, I can aim at the 5th. I can aim at the flat 7. So, and then of course the root. So that's just using the Aeolian mode and targeting some of the chord tones. So if we get to the extensions, so like I could target like the flat 6 in here. And then target the 2 or the 9. Flat 6. Flat 7. Root. The 5th. So you want to be aware of what the notes are within the scale or the mode, so you can really target those ideas, especially if you're on one chord going to the next chord, and you really kind of make your improvised lines sound really good when you can target like specific notes of the next chord coming up. And then of course you're changing modes or whatever for that particular chord if you like. But it's always nice to have that strength when you're improvising. I'm going to put on the screen a list of some great songs that give you examples of these modes. Okay, I hope this has helped out. Just remember, memorizing the modes in order: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Understanding that it's just, if we start on each note of the major scale and just follow those notes, it gives you those particular modes. Then the next layer to that onion is understanding where the half steps fall within each mode. The next layer to that is to understanding the chords, how the triads, the major, minor, diminished, and augmented chords fall into some of those. Augmented, not so much in these particular modes. And then understanding the 7th chords and how they relate to each mode. Ionian and Lydian go with major 7. The Mixolydian mode goes with dominant 7. And those are all major modes. And then your minor modes, Aeolian, Dorian, and Phrygian, they all go with a minor 7. And then understanding the extensions that go along with that. And then last but not least, you have Locrian, which is diminished. And then the next layer is understanding characteristic notes of each mode, like the sharp 4 for Lydian, the flat 7 for Mixolydian, the flat 2 for Phrygian, the major 6 for Dorian. Start to really memorize those things and target those notes as you play through them and you practice the single chord vamps. I encourage you to just experiment and practice. It takes a while to really make your playing and improvising sound interesting. But a great start is just those one chord vamps. Start targeting the interesting notes of each scale. Some, like the flat 2s and the flat 9s, you want to just hint at, but don't necessarily stay there too long. And that will give you the flavor, but it's sometimes the notes are a little too dissonant to really hold on to. Sometimes that might be what you want to do. I'm interested in hearing how your practice goes with this, how well you understood some of this. Please leave comments down in the bottom. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I really appreciate it. Hit that notification bell. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you're liking what's going on. It really helps the channel. And I hope to see you next time. Really do appreciate all you guys. We'll see you.